Hey guys, it's Martin Schneider here, VP and Principal Analyst at Constellation, covering growth strategies, growth technologies, and all kinds of other cool stuff.
And I'm Larry Dignan, Editor-in-Chief of Constellation Insights, and we're your co-hosts for CRTV episode 106. And we're here to talk about the latest news in enterprise tech and a bunch of other stuff. This episode, we're covering Snowflake Summit, Salesforce's acquisition of Informatica, because, well, they just can't. They can't possibly refrain from buying people. And then we're going to talk about some price changes we're seeing in terms of agentic AI. So let's get started with Snowflake. Snowflake Summit's this week, and that matters because Databricks is next week. And these two are just, they'll announce the acquisitions while the other one's on the keynote stage. They're both in San Francisco with their conferences. They like to duel a good bit. But for Snowflake, the focus here is what a difference a year makes. This time last year, the new CEO came in, Ramaswamy, replaced Slootman, who was very well respected. And Ramaswamy's he's basically a product guy. And they've really upped their cadence. They've connected with LLMs and AI a lot more. And they're rolling out some pretty cool features, including Snowflake OpenFlow, which moves data around to where it needs to be so it can be used by AI. They have a thing called Snowflake Intelligence, where you can kind of query your data. Uses a bunch of different LLMs. What I thought was most interesting is it sort of toggles between Anthropic LLMs as well as OpenAI. And they're definitely LLM agnostic, the way they're connecting to things on the back end for their own platform. They also rolled out a data science agent and agents to do other data sort of tasks. So basically, they're trying to make life a little easier for the data folks. The other thing they launched I thought was interesting was Cortex AI SQL, where you don't need the SQL queries anymore because you can just use natural language. So there's just a lot of interesting, cool features. There's another one called Snow Convert AI, which basically aims to convert legacy data infrastructure into Snowflake's platform. So it's just a bunch of interesting things. They're doing good stuff. Their cadence has really picked up. And they're also addressing some of the long-term complaints in terms of cost. Their performance is getting better. And it's just going to be interesting to watch them duel with Databricks over time. And they'll probably one-up each other every chance they get. But if you're an enterprise, chances are pretty good you have Databricks or Snowflake or both. So it's definitely worth paying attention to what's going on. And more importantly, to customer references and kind of what they're doing. Snowflake did have a bunch of big name customers out there, as will Databricks. So we'll watch that play out over time. And speaking of data, Martin, you can take the Salesforce Informatica deal.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we heard rumblings of this a while back. Didn't happen for whatever reason, right? Now it's happening, or at least it looks like it's going to be happening. I mean, nothing is final until it's final. But I mean, look, it makes perfect sense, right? When you actually, I mean, take a look at what you were just describing. It's like, could Salesforce buy Snowflake? Should they? It might even have been even a better deal in terms of the long tail. But what Informatica brings, when it comes to data, when it comes to data quality, when it comes to moving data, data cloud is data, but it doesn't do a lot of the things that you need to do around ETL, around data quality, around making sure that you have data flows that actually power this next generation of applications in the age of AI. And a lot of those applications aren't touched by humans, right? So that data needs to be precise. It needs to have the right volume, the right value to it. So there's a lot that Salesforce didn't get from MuleSoft, doesn't get from Tableau when it comes to that mechanisms and infrastructure around data that Informatica brings to the table. I would say it's probably their best plumbing deal to date. They've done interesting deals around big deals, obviously, like what was Slack, almost 30 billion. And you can kind of see how that really does kind of raise awareness. But Informatica is the linchpin, or can be the linchpin, for them to get their Atlas engine and the agent force really humming, because while a Salesforce classic sales automation deployment may not have great data in it, the organizations using it have good data elsewhere. And Informatica will be the ability to pull that data in, normalize it, work with it, have it mesh with the LLM, do all the kinds of things you want to do to actually start getting positive returns, positive outcomes out of your agentic flows, what Agentforce brings, also enabling the ability to be more multi-agent and to play nice with the agents from all of the other applications like SAP, like Microsoft tools and the Exchange and all those, and 365 and all that kind of stuff that every enterprise uses, right? So there's going to be a big upside here. I think, if it closes this acquisition, integrates things well, and just starts using it, the $8 billion isn't probably a very big price tag when you think of what can actually bring to them to make their future of the Agentforce vision even more real. So I think it's a necessary move, if not an intelligent move.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things here. One, there's a huge installed base for Informatica, and there's probably a lot of overlap in terms of customer base.
Sure.
So it's all going to be about the integration. The other thing is, and this is a question and a reason to buy them, Salesforce, if it's going to be a real agentic AI horizontal player, needs to look more neutral. Right now, it's about its platform. It's going to own CRM, sales, service, all that good stuff. But if it wants to bridge out in other things, it needs more of a Switzerland play. And that's kind of what Informatica was. The question is whether that marketing pitch, that appeal will last over time as part of Salesforce. Yeah. And we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, for the price, I think it was a good deal, necessary plumbing that needs to happen. Yep. And we'll see how it goes from there.
Yep.
It's also going to be interesting to see how things are priced, because Salesforce ran out with flex credits. So they're moving more towards a consumption model.
Yep.
As opposed to seats. And we'll have to see how that plays out and how they, sort of charge the tolls. Because, they're basically charging by completed actions and things like that when it comes to agentic AI. And, we'll see how it comes together on the consumption side. But it's pretty clear Salesforce, like a lot of the agentic AI players, it's going to be a consumption pricing model, which I think you've had a lot to do with this week or last couple of weeks.
Well, I'm seeing, look, we're seeing the models change, right? At Build, understanding where co-pilots and agents come together, even for Microsoft, it's going to mean new pricing models. It just means new usage models mean new pricing models, right? Even at, a smaller company like Gainsight at their Pulse event, they didn't talk about this explicitly, but when you look at how they're breaking out their staircase AI capabilities, they're bringing these new Atlas agents, which I don't love that they call it Atlas. Salesforce has Atlas. It's a lot of
a lot of naming overlap here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Copilot's fine, all right? I get it. That's a concept, not a product, but whatever. But when you kind of look at where they're going, when you look at, AI is going to make the CSM world, how many customer success managers, how many BDRs and things that, AI is making the employment size flat, if not smaller. And if you're selling seat licenses, how are you going to grow? So for a company like Gainsight, it's like, now we have to think outside the customer success box, right? Get outside the org and sell a growth strategy concept of like, hey, we've got all these really great interactions. We've got all these cool signals that the AI is bringing. We have great workflows. We have agents. How do we actually make this either up to the executive suite? How do we move this into sales and marketing and product and things like that? So how do they get more eyeballs on there? But also, how does the agentic vision of these end-to-end customer success workflows that don't have to necessarily be owned and powered or even touched by a CSM, how do they generate value, and then how do you price for that? So even companies like Gainsight, who are kind of like a juggernaut, really kind of taking over that, how do they start to rethink both their go-to-market in terms of pricing, packaging, and even just targeting? Like, how do we get outside of this? Because we're going to see more and more, and it's not a great thing, is the seat-based license model is limited because we are going to have less humans doing these jobs and needing the applications.
Right.
The agents are the application that we would have charged a seat license for, but it doesn't make as much sense to charge that way because it's not used the same way. So we're entering a really interesting time right now. And I think the flex credits, I think as we see people breaking out their AI tools so that they can, where Gainsight, for example, was like, hey, we sell to customer success. Now, the insights there, you can both sell to a Salesforce user who wants to extend it into customer success without buying something like a Gainsight, but they can get tools from Gainsight, or people who aren't even using a CRM but want to start doing better at retention. It's like, well, we don't have to go the whole hog route. We can actually just start to look at the insights and take action on them, either a small organization or a large organization. The agents enable you to have, virtual CSMs. So, it's going to change the way we price because it's not per user per month. I log in, at the beginning of the day, and I'm a human kind of tapping at the thing, right? It doesn't really, that paradigm is not, it's incomplete, for lack of a better term. And things are going to change, and it's going to cause a little chaos, I think, but possibly in a good way with some good outcomes that are value oriented and win-win on both sides. And that's
what I think that's the holy grail that the vendors are trying to get at is, what do I price for value? So I think ultimately they're going to get to value-based pricing where, perhaps the consumption on something like order to cash, a process that drives a ton of value, maybe the price is higher there versus some other thing.
Yeah, no, there's a company at the Gainsight Pulse event that I spent some time with at their booth. Magnify does this really cool thing where it's like, here's like, because they're kind of like think of it as like post sale on steroids, right? Of what like a customer success tool does. And it's like, hey, if this is your book of business and it grows because you retain and expand using our insights, we just want like a couple basis points of that.
Right.
So it's kind of becoming the e-commerce model on that consumption model and value model, because it's not just transactional consumption, which can be easily commodified and how do you see the value, but actually seeing like you grew revenue because you used us and we can show you the receipts, you know what I mean? Right. So we just want to cut, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how some startups who don't have like big install bases and stock prices to worry about start really disrupting the market. So it's going to be really cool.
So that's it for the news this week. Stay tuned. I'll have a conversation with Esteban Kolsky about AI infrastructure. And then we're going to cover the launch of Ciroos. It's a startup focused on creating AI site reliability managers, which, site reliability, it's sort of this big white space in the observability world. And they have some pretty cool ideas, a good pedigree, and I'll be chatting with them about, what the master plan is. Hi, I'm Larry Dignan from Constellation Insight, and we're here with our chief distiller, Esteban Kolsky, and we're talking enterprise cloud infrastructure. And the setup here is Dell, NVIDIA, all the AI infrastructure folks. They're, on their earnings calls, they're talking more about enterprises actually buying stuff.
Yeah, Dell, NVIDIA, Boomi, Dell, NVIDIA, Boomi, even Salesforce acquiring Informatica is part of the same concept. It's just amplifying, augmenting the enterprise cloud infrastructure, which is it's something that smart CIOs have been doing for the last 2-3 years, and it's finally getting to the board level. I've seen some boards where the CIO has been made to report directly to the board because it's such a critical element of the strategy going forward, that they need to make sure that it goes in the right direction without distractions, that it gets properly funded, that it gets properly monitored. And it's one of the, it's like everything that I've done in my life. It's a culmination of my 10, 12, 15 years, 20, 30 years doing this, where I finally see all the things that I've been previewing, envisioning, and wanting to get done, getting done, and it really makes me happy to see it. There's a lot of, like you said, NVIDIA, Dell, Boomi, all these guys are saying the enterprises are buying stuff, and the question is not what they're buying, but what they're doing with it, and that's what I would like to discuss a little bit more today.
Yeah, so I think the idea up until it actually started showing up in results is that everything AI would run through the cloud, the public cloud.
Yeah.
And then
until 5 years ago, that was it.
Yeah, and we've been looking at it and going, well, there are good reasons to have some private AI cloud infrastructure too. But hasn't really caught on until now. What's driving the enterprise infrastructure?
Well, partly, a large part of it is what you say, and I mean, essentially, AI was going to run on the cloud. Google and Microsoft became, key providers of access to AI libraries and AI functions as part of the what they were doing. AWS was doing the same thing, but all of a sudden, you have some more interesting things happening. You have organizations that are noticing the privacy and confidentiality of the data is violated. You have organizations that are trying to go through traditional integration platforms, traditional iPaaS, not getting the value that they want, not getting what they need from it, seeing that they're losing out in vendors enabling or disabling access and integration points, seeing that they cannot get what they need to get done. And then in the last couple of years, in the last couple of years, we have seen also organizations that are saying, we need more control. We need to be able to do things the way we want to. I don't want these guys to tell me that I need to go through there to integrate with these other guys that I also buy. Or they're saying, I don't want to have 3 vendors doing the same. I want to have only one, and I want to be able to manage that. All that stuff is coming together into showing up a new way to get there, which is instead of using the cloud for everything that we said we would, maybe what we should be doing is building our private platform. Maybe we should need, in the 3 layers of the internet, the platform should be ours, should not be, driven or derived by the vendor. And that's what's actually guiding a lot of those implementations. That's what these conversations are about.
So what does that mean for things like models? Does that mean you're going to take more off the shelf?
Actually, I think it means that you're going to customize off the shelf to make it fit what you want. I mean, we have to understand that Gen AI and LLMs are like the tip of the iceberg for AI, right? There's a lot more value to be produced outside of actually, getting there. I mean, there's limited value and limited use cases that you can attack through LLM. There's a lot of value in automating through other tools. So in order to get there, the models that you create are going to be more hybrid. They're going to be partly based on a Claude or an Anthropic or OpenAI or even some other specific mixture of experts model or something like that. And they're going to be more into what do I do to get there? What's the value that I get? How can I bring all my data into the model to make it work in a different way? Those are the things that you're going to start seeing more and more, and that you're going to start seeing organizations, when they get into that point, they're going to say, how do we manage this? We need to manage this by doing a private platform that gives us the control for the rules, gives us the controls for the bounds. We can have conversations about ethical AI. We can have conversations about confidential AI. We can have a bunch of other conversations, but we need to have control of all these things. And that's what these private platforms are doing. They're taking the public available resources with the private available resources and creating a platform that they manage to control these things.
So does that mean, Jensen Huang's idea of AI factories, we're all going to have one? Does that mean that's going to play out?
It should play out, but that's a whole different discussion, right? Because when you go into the hardware level and you go into CapEx needs a return on investment that is far shorter than software, right? You can get a software tool implemented for 10, 15 years and get a return on investment over 8 years and get there and you'll be happy. You cannot do that with hardware because of many different reasons, amortization and commoditization and so forth. But I mean, there's a value to having a part of what you do being internally managed and being part of your own AI factory, and then interface with external models for the part that it doesn't pertain to you. That's what we're going for. We're going to a hybrid model where everything's become private and public and hybrid at the same time, and that's why you need to build a platform that is going to manage it.
Does that mean, I guess, what's a timeline here? I mean, because I've talked to I've talked to a couple enterprises that they already feel like they went ChatGPT and OpenAI very early, and now they feel like they have legacy infrastructure and they're kind of trapped.
It is. That's true.
How do you avoid that trapped feeling? If you're building out your own. I guess, how do you build out this private angle without getting yourself stuck?
So there's 2 parts to the answer. Number one, you asked me what's the timeline. The timeline is 1 through N, where N is 2 through 10 years minimum, right? It's not something that you're doing today that is going to give fruits like, today or next week or 6 months or whatever. Infrastructure projects tend to be long-term. So that's not number one. But the second part to what you were asking is like, how do you prevent this from becoming another lock-in, right? Because that's what it is. If you go with OpenAI and you make the commitment and you don't do anything else, now you're locked into another vendor. Maybe you are locked into Oracle for databases and SAP for ERP and Salesforce for front of the house, and you don't want to bring somebody else into that. But the prevention of the lock-in is to have the ability to access that as you need within your rules and your parameters, and that's what a private platform will give you. If I build a model that gives me access to, Salesforce and SAP and Oracle and ServiceNow and whatever, and Dell and Boomi and everything else, and I build the integration points that I need, control from my private platform from A to B, but through me with my rules, my access rules, everything that I need. That's what we're looking at. We're looking at the control to wrest the control away from the vendor telling me what I can and cannot do because of the lock-in that they have, and moving more into like me telling the vendor what I need from them because of what I need to deliver at the end of the day.
So it's more of this idea of composability where you can kind of mix and match things.
1000%. I mean, when you look at the whole concept of cloud, traditional cloud infrastructures, two things that the cloud has is the ability to scale up and scale out, right? You can do multiple instances of the same thing to scale out. So like the same thing gets customized in a million different ways. And you can scale up by adding computing power or storage or whatever you need by renting it as you need it. That's the whole model of the cloud. And this is just leveraging distributed technologies and the value of the cloud by being able to rent the computing power and the storage that I need on one hand, and then being able to, on the other hand, create this scale out by customizing and personalizing all this. And what I need a way to manage and monitor and control the scaling out instantiation through personalization, and nothing better than a private platform to do that.
Do the enterprises have the talent to do this, or can they just kind of vibe code their way to it?
Oh, dude, we're not going to talk about vibe coding. You can vibe code your way to proving the concept. How's that? I'm okay with that. You can say, there's a concept here to be proven that if we get to this and get to that, we can get value. Let's vibe code it. That's fine. But the enterprises have partly, I mean, they again, I'm talking about world-class / smart CIOs that started this process 2, 3, 5 years ago, that they've been acquiring the talent in-house. And we're talking about other organizations that will actually outsource the talent through consulting or systems integrators, or even through body shops from different places to start understanding what they do. At the end of the day, this is going to become like everything else that is a strategic to the enterprise. Is going to become a board level concept that is going to have its own chief X officer or similar SVP level officer reporting into a CIO. Managing all this work.
All right. Thanks a lot. Good stuff. Something to think about for sure.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me here. It was a great discussion.
Hi, I'm Larry Dignan from Constellation Insights, and we're here with Ronak Desai. He's CEO of Ciroos. It's a company that just launched. Hi, Ronak. How you doing?
Thank you very much, Larry. Very nice meeting you. So it's an exciting day. Company, as you pronounce, it's called Ciroos.ai. We're building AI SRE teammate, really to help our operations teams, which are DevOps, sometimes referred as DevOps or SRE or general ops teams. If you think about modern IT infrastructure, and when you have to investigate outages on those, there are hundreds of experts which needs to get involved, lots of tools and dashboards. It takes on an average 2 hours to resolve. Ciroos wants to end all of that to really give the time back and potentially a sleep to our ops teams. Multi-agentic AI is new, and to really our goal is to reduce the investigation time. Sometimes it takes days to hours and hours to minute. Only Ciroos understands this aspect of multi-domain and the vast amount of data which is out there to correlate as a model of experts, building those agents across each of those expertise to really give you that precise information to our ops teams so that they can take the action. It has a human-like reasoning. So that's basically what Ciroos.ai is on a mission to accomplish.
So is it a case of needing a site reliability engineer teammate, or is it a case of you almost need like goggles to sort of manage the sprawl. I mean, because we've had microservices that already got kind of unwieldy, and then you get containers, and then you just get, there's so many things. And then you have all the logs, like it kind of never ends. So I guess, why do we need the teammate, or is that even the right term? Is it more like, night vision goggles or something? I guess, it's about managing sprawl though, primarily, right?
Yeah. So the way the SRE teams today work, right? They use all those observability tools, right? So our goal first, let me just put it out, right? We do not compete with any of the observability tools. We really competing with manual labor and the toil SREs have, right? Really looking at this hundreds of dashboards and trying to figure it out and creating a cognitive load for humans. So we're really going after that problem, still keeping human in the loop, because at the end of the day, look, you have all the dashboards in the world at your fingertips. Its ability to correlate those insights, and it's humanly not possible, or it takes a long time. And so that's why I think of this as, can I give you 100x expert for each of those domains who can sit next to you, give you all that insight when you get woken up at 2 a.m, before even you get on the call. And so that you can start to make those precise decisions, having all that information summarized to you, to really resolve that incident, right? And SREs, to me, like, and this is where I see teammate makes a perfect sense here. One is the investigation for the alerts which are coming in. Second one is SREs also spend a lot of time proactively investigating the issues. And so if you look at it, if I have an ability to sort of augment their functionality, it would be really powerful, right? So the way we sort of think about it is, there's an aspect of automation, there's an aspect of augment the functionality where I can start to make and give them the capabilities for proactive investigations. And then there's an aspect of when alert fires and somebody has to get on the call, or tens of them has to get on the call, can we get all the information? Can we get the RCA, root cause analysis, figure it out, give them that information? And if they wish so, they can automate it where it can work as a full autopilot and implement the root cause analysis and remediation. So that's how we sort of think about it, the journey. And that's why I call it teammate perfectly describes what we are trying to do here.
So what do the models and the reasoning engines, where do they get their content and what do they pull from? I mean, I imagine it's a bunch of logs, but where are they getting their information?
Excellent question, Larry. So the way we think about it is, we integrate with your ecosystem of tools, whether it's observability tool, your incident management, your ticketing system. So we extract the right set of information from whether it's the logs, metrics, tracing, events. So we get that. Not only that, when your human SRE expert gets onto the call to investigate an incident, not only they are looking at the historical data, not only they are looking at what is fondly called as MELT signal, metrics, events, logs, and tracing, but they're also connecting to the live system. So this is what we do, which is extract the right set of insights from all of those tools, work with your collaboration tools, but also connect to your live system and starts to extract the information which is live, right? So sort of putting all that information allows us, with the reasoning model, ability to narrow down the problem. A lot of times eliminating those domains where you potentially could have a problem, that where the problem is super critical, right? So it's not only where the problem is, but it's eliminating the domains where the problem is not. And that's how we sort of go about deploying the solution.
So I guess let's talk about the shifts facing IT teams, and kind of, if you're pitching Ciroos to, an SRE or an enterprise, what do they gain? Is it time, or I guess what's the ROI metrics to think about here?
So I say sleep is the best measure of uptime. But to really put it into tangible benefits, right? We're really looking at to avoid that manual toil, right? The tasks which are absolutely something which we do not want our human SREs to do, right? We really are looking at that to make sure that we can help customers with that. The other one is to really help them narrow down which domain the problem could be, right? So, and then if you have got onto the war room calls or incident calls, there are hundreds of Slack messages, right? So can we sort of eliminate this dashboard diving, having hundreds of experts getting on the call, endless Slack messages, long investigation windows, and cut it down to hours to minutes is where we believe that we would have top enterprises really adopt this solution to really get that benefit in terms of reducing the mean time to resolution, but really help them reduce the toil and give them a teammate which can augment and autopilot the function.
So this sort of approach that you're doing, it's kind of, has it been overlooked or it just wasn't possible in the DevOps world?
So the way our ops teams worked was, there was an aspect automation, right? Where you would have heard about runbooks, right? And runbooks are sort of gets dated the moment it's put into the practice because things are constantly changing, right? So those are what I call it static runbooks. And so this approach about the reasoning models, like the way the human think about solving and eliminating the potential problems, that unlock happened because of the new capabilities which are coming in, right? And so that's basically where we feel the technology is headed. That's exactly the empowering thing which we are doing it. And we are also sort of building in such a way the capabilities where as the model continue to evolve, we continue to get benefit by those evolution of model. Because as you know, in the world of AI, things are moving on a day-to-day basis, right? So we need to absolutely be ready to sort of support our customers and get the benefit of that technology as we move forward. The other part which, Larry, we sort of talked about it, but I'll double click on it, is when we look at the global enterprises, right? It is all about multi-cloud and a hybrid environment, right? So they, by strategy, they want to be in a hybrid situation where they have workload in their data center or in the cloud and probably multiple cloud, right? So I think able to support those environments is super critical for Ciroos, right? And this is what is included as when we talk about multi-domain, multi-agent system.
So when you think about the architecture behind Ciroos and the product that's coming out at some point, how do you leave yourself that extensibility to take on new models, different environments? I mean, you got to give yourself a lot of wiggle room in there. How do you think about building that?
Yeah, so one is the aspect of leveraging as the model evolves, leveraging that capability to build the AI teammate. The second one is making ourselves extensible, right? Because in enterprise, as you know, there are lots of tools, lots of different vendors into the practice. And you would have seen it where a networking vendor would release their own agent, or a security vendor would release their own agent. Able to work with that ecosystem of agent if customer is deployed is super critical. So out of the box, we build agent-to-agent capability where we can hook it into agent which customer has deployed or developed on their own. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is to support MCP, which is the Model Context Protocol, which we build it inside. All our agents talk MCP internally, right? So we are sort of glued into this open and extensible ecosystems. So we can work with what the customer's environment is, right? Absolutely out of the park, we want to deliver the capabilities which we are building it across all of those domains, but able to work in the customer's ecosystem is an important aspect for enterprise customers.
All right, so I guess my final question would be, what's next? I guess what can we expect from Ciroos?
So we are absolutely inviting customers to join us on this exciting journey. This is the time, this is the year of agentic AI, but really building this AI which can work as a teammate to augment and help you autopilot the functions is extremely critical. The other important aspect is to continue to build this multi-domain aspect of it, because at the end of the day, your application doesn't depend on one component, but it depends on multiple different components, right? So we absolutely will continue to build the capabilities in that. And then the ultimate goal is to reduce this human toil from SREs and our ops team's perspective, so that we can give them the sleep and the time back to really build the scalable system, really focus on problems which matters to the enterprises or their employers.
All right. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Larry, for having me here.
All right. Well, that is a wrap on episode 106 of CRTV. Watch for our next episode in 2 weeks.
And that's right. In a couple of weeks, co-host Holger Mueller and Liz Miller will be riffing on, well, whatever they riff on, which tends to be a lot. In the meantime, track us on LinkedIn, Twitter, or is that X?
It's always X.
And all the other places to find us.
And always subscribe to Constellation Research on YouTube. Subscribe to see our insights at constellationnr.com. Larry's always churning out the latest and greatest take on everything that's coming out. Larry, I don't know how your brain doesn't explode, but always follow us. He's got the best enterprise news coverage, enterprise tech news coverage. So we will see you next time. Thanks for joining us. Where? Why? Hello?
Hello?
Hello? All right, we got it.
There we go. Only the note takers showed up for the huddle.
As usual.
Yeah, dude. Hannah, you got to turn off those note takers.
How? I don't know
And-
how.
Zoom does it.
I had no idea my note taker was joining meetings. How rude.
Yeah, your note taker's running all over the place.
My note taker's out like, dude, I just got like sketchy credit card fucking charges for my note taker.
You guys have the busiest note takers ever. Yes? No? Maybe?
Chat it to us. Come back. Yeah, it's 106.
Yes.
106. Okay.
All right. And then we're going to talk about agentic AI and some of the price changes we're seeing. Maybe I should do that all over again. What do you think?
Yeah, let's take it from the top.
There's a lot of stuff on there.
Yep.
Stumbling, bumbling, rumbling. I have a bird that's trying to break into my office.
Well, hey, I didn't know you were in London.
It's been trying to do this for basically the whole morning.
Great. Get out, bird.
I think it's like an idiot woodpecker. Yeah. Anyway, I digress.
Is there a smart woodpecker? They spend their day banging their head against the trees.
Right.
Interesting fact, the woodpecker's tongue goes all the way around its head to actually insulate itself when it's banging its head.
That would have made football so much easier.
Exactly. No CTE if it was
the
Washington Woodpeckers. So anyhow, all right, let's go from the top. Hey guys, it's Martin Schneider, VP and Principal Analyst here at Constellation, covering growth strategies. Do it again.
We have to do it again. We're talking woodpeckers. We're talking Camden rehab.
Yeah, exactly.
What could go wrong?
We're bleeding over now. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Including Snowflake Open Slow. Open Slow. Let's do that again. I'm going to kill this fucking bird.
If it doesn't kill itself, it's going to break its neck if it hits the glass hard enough, right?
All morning.